It is the Beaver Banter podcast. I'm CJ Baumgartner, Ian Rivers, my co-host. Ian, it's always a great day to be a Beaver. A little less so after this week. I mean, there was some good stuff that happened and some frustrating stuff, but we'll talk about that throughout this episode of the Beaver Banter podcast. Before we start, Ian, why don't you plug the Discord?
Yeah, join the Discord. We're getting close to one of the more exciting times of the year, which is when fall sports and winter sports overlap. I hate saying that here in early September still, but fall sports are
Like 80 degrees
well,
outside, man.
the winter sports are only like a month away. Hockey especially starts before basketball does. Basketball isn't actually until like November most years, but hockey starts up in October usually. So join the Discord, get in there before that. Chatting on hockey games is always super fun. The football game this last weekend was fun to be in the Discord for, regardless of the result. It's fun interacting with people in there during the game. So join the Discord. It's on all of our social media pages. Yeah, go follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook, wherever you consume your social media, and the link will be there. And I'll give it a retweet again after this episode ends, so that it's out there for you guys.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great place to go. It's a great place to just kind of get some venting off your chest. It's a great place to go to enjoy the successes of Beaver sports as well. It's a really great time. Go join the Discord for Beaver Banter. All right, Ian, let's first talk football. Bemidji State goes down to Mankato to play Minnesota State. We knew this was going to be a grind. We knew this was going to be a good game. Whenever Minnesota State and Bemidji State play each other, I mean, the last 3 years, it's came down to the wire every single time. This was no exception. Unfortunately, Bemidji State ends up on the downside of one of this game, and they end up falling 31-29 on a last-second field goal. A little bit of coverage lapses, a little bit of just mistakes here and there, and it's not that Bemidji State played a bad game, but just every little mistake they made, it felt like MSU was able to capitalize and take advantage, and Beavers almost pull off an upset. Top 10 team at home. Bemidji State again. I think the announcing crew for Mankato said that it was the largest crowd ever at that stadium, and you nearly go in there and win and get to come back to Bemidji with the feather in your cap. Instead, just a gut-wrenching loss, man.
Yeah, I mean, it really was, dude. I think honestly, like, they played about as perfect as they could have. I mean, we talked about last week, like, hey, shut me up. Like I predicted them to lose, and I was hoping that I'd be wrong. And they, for all intents and purposes, they shut me up because I did not see that coming out of the offense. And honestly, I thought the defense played pretty well. There was the two plays that what's his last name? Watson for Mankato, the wide receiver who had a crazy game, was able to get loose behind the secondary. And if those two plays don't happen, I mean, you can't ask the defense to play much better than that. His first touchdown, he kind of mossed. I can't remember which defensive back it was, unfortunately. It was a great catch by him, but it was a bit of a mossing in the end zone. So again, but even on that, you can't play the defense much better. He just went and got the ball when
Sometimes
it
you
was
get got.
pretty good defense. Right. So like outside of that, it was a great game to watch. I think it's one of the, at least in the 3 years that we've been covering this, I mean, probably the most exciting game that I've watched. Like, yeah, there's some playoff games in there, but honestly, like
The drama
the
aspect of it.
drama of this game was we have the lead, we don't. We have the lead again. Now we don't. And now, it did. It just felt like whatever team got the ball last was unfortunately going to win there. You mentioned the crowd. They I'm stumbling over my word. I have so much to say about this game that I'm trying to say it all at once, and it's making me fumble over my words here. Yeah, they announced that it was like 7,000 some people or whatever it was watching the game in the stadium, and my wife was on the couch watching with me, and she goes, "There's 7,000 people watching this football game, Mankato and Bemidji," and I go, "It's a big deal. This is about as good as it gets for NSIC football. You can't ask for much more." And One of the things I was telling myself after the game, I mean, it's a heartbreaking way to lose, dude. It's just brutal because this is going to be one that annoys the team and me and you, I'm sure, for the rest of the year. You know, if they go and they have a good season, you're going to get down there and you'd be like, man, yeah, we're, you know, top 15 ranked right now, but imagine what we could have been if we just blocked that field goal, or if that high snap was a little bit higher and they screwed it up and couldn't get the placement down, you know. But at the end of the day, that's not what matters. But honestly, it feels like to me right now. Do you remember when you and I first got to campus and it was Duluth back then? The Beavers could not beat Duluth, and they were close. You go to the stadium every time Duluth's come to town because you want this to be the first time in 15, 16, 17 years that they beat Duluth. And every freaking game, it was one play that Bemidji made, and you told yourself that was it. That lost us the game because it was a muffed punt. It was a fumble when they were driving in inside the 30-yard line to try to take a game-winning touchdown or something. And it was like one play early in the fourth quarter, midway through the fourth quarter, almost every time. And they even made it the first year they beat Duluth. They made that play. They muffed a punt or something, and I go, oh, no. There it was again, but they like turned over Duluth. They ended up winning the game. And I'm like, well, that's what that is. And I was hoping that this would be the year that we finally got over the top and beat Mankato. It wasn't meant to be, unfortunately. Maybe if this game was at home, we have the 3-point swing, right? That's what Vegas gives the home team usually in NFL betting odds is 3 points. But the Beaver faithful, anybody who is down there that's listening to this right now, thank you. That was awesome. There was a lot of Beaver fans at that game. There was a lot. So that was really cool. And yeah, I mean, dude, I mean, to just run over some of the stats quick. I mean, Sam McGath, phenomenal game compared to what he did last week. I mean, 149 passing yards, 3 touchdowns through the air. He had added $135 on the ground, including a touchdown. So he had 4 total touchdowns and like 275 total yards. Outstanding game from Sam. Deep ball was working. I'll tell you what, dude. Him and Bryce Peters have a little bit of an Alt to Bolio type connection. 5 touchdowns to Bryce Peters so far this season. What a game from him as well. 7 catches, 103 yards, 108 yards.
That last touchdown catch he had, unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Bryce, what the hell, dude? That was nuts.
Friend of the show.
I wish they had a better angle of that because that's
Sports Center top 10. I mean,
unbelievable catch.
The friend of the podcast, by the way, Peters.
Yes, friend of the podcast, Bryce Peters. Jaden Washington, Jared Gronsky, Justin Incapra, all phenomenal on the ground. Every one of them averaged over 4.5 yards a tote. And the Beavers put up 303 rushing yards against a team not named like Minot State or UMary. Unbelievable rushing game.
Minnesota State. That's a good defense. That's a good team.
So everything that we're saying, like, we lost this game, dude. We lost this game. This
line because it's like they played so well. There were so many things there that you take out of it and you go, this is a darn good football team. This team can play with anybody in the conference. This is a team that should be competing for a playoff spot at the end of the season. This team went down to Mankato. They capacity crowd, played their guts out and just couldn't win. And that's what's frustrating because it's like, if you get this game, it changes the trajectory of your season completely. You get that win. You're in the driver's seat for the NSIC. I know there's some tough games coming up on the schedule for them that, you know, even still, but I mean, they would have been in such a good spot. And despite all of that, despite the fact that, yeah, they didn't have some things go right on special teams. They didn't have some things go right, you know, in that final drive. Despite that, I'm walking away feeling much better about Bemidji State than I felt after the overtime win against Michigan Tech, right?
Absolutely. I mean, this is a game that, I mean, you know, you say what you want about moral victories. I don't like taking moral victories as much when I have an expectation for this program. This program is not one that's been a 6-win team on average over the last 5 years.
Victory program.
Yeah, not at this point. They don't love moral victories at all. But like, Yeah, I do. I feel a lot better about this team's chances to compete in games like this after seeing this. Um, Absolutely. Absolutely. You're looking down the schedule after last week and you're like, damn, dude, Sioux Falls just beat, a D1 team by 3 touchdowns. Um, Wayne State is averaging like 46.5 points this year. Mankato or Augustana is obviously always going to be tough. So like there's some droppable games on this schedule. And now you sit there and you think, yeah, we're definitely still going to be in the running for all this. And as much as that loss just sucks, man, like there's those losses that you just are never going to forget. And like you said, like 3 years in a row now, we've talked about this Mankato game where it's like, oh, we're so close. The first season, all we just had to do was not implode in the first half and be down by like 3 scores at halftime. We outplayed them by far in the second half of that game. But it came down to the fact that we were just too far behind to crawl all the way back in.
Bemidji State would have won.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If that game was 5 quarters, Bemidji wins. Last year, the running game for Mankato was just so good. And at the end of the game, when Mankato had the lead, couldn't. I mean, they were a
lot like that Detroit Lions game, right? Where it's like at a certain point, like you just got ran over and it's like, there's nothing you could do. They just did such a good job all game long to where they won that battle of attrition and were able to close it out and do the style of football they wanted. And again, this year you get to that spot, you outrush Mankato, you outplay them in a lot of different areas, but they were just able to make the plays that they needed to make. And Mankato obviously is a good team. They have agency. They are capable of winning a game like this, and they're at home. They, again, are a good team. They came off of a good win on the road to start their season. So, I mean, look, you want to win this game. It's disappointing that Bemidji State did not win this game. There's things that they did that they're going to need to improve upon if they're going to want to come out of this, if they want to win games like this in the future. Because as we talked about, there's some games on the schedule that could very well come down like this one did. So this isn't to give them a pass and say everything is fine, but it is to say, don't panic because I know it's heartbreaking, but don't panic because they lost this game. I think that's the message, Ian, that we're trying to take out of this one, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the benefit of winning this is, well, obviously there's a lot of benefits to winning the game, but like now your back's against the wall a little bit. It's not easy to make this playoff with more than 2 losses. We don't see that too often. You have to have a pretty solid resume outside of those 3 losses.
Where you're gonna need to not, like, 2 losses is it. Like, this conference is too good. They're going to let somebody is going to be ahead of you if you lose 3 games.
Right. Like we don't have a crack at Duluth this year. We have a decently solid schedule. Sioux Falls looks good this year, and Wayne State and Augustana are on the docket later this year, including Moorhead, Winona. So there's some difficult games, but you're going to have to win. You might only have 1 loss left in the tank if you want to be sure to get back to the playoffs for the 3rd year in a row or 4th year in a row. You don't have as much wiggle room, which is the most unfortunate thing about not winning this game. Plus, I mean, you win a game against the top 10 team on the road, you might have a little more wiggle room for a 3rd loss because now your resume looks a little better. But again, this is still, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's a good loss. They only dropped 3 spots in the top 25.
Which means that everybody else understands this is not a bad loss for people.
Yeah, so when they're looking at the resumes, they're going to see like, yeah, this is a 3-loss team, but they did beat Wayne State and they only lost by 2 on the road to Minnesota State. Yeah, we're going to give them that 7 seed and just throw them in or something like that. But honestly, I think at this point, I'm feeling pretty confident about this team going forward. I definitely do think that they can get back to the playoffs, and it's going to be really exciting now to see whether or not they can get back there.
Well, and the other thing too for Bemidji State, this is a good opportunity for a get right game. And we're going to dive into that in just a second here, but I want to wrap up our discussion of this game we already mentioned it a little bit with Bryce, but I mean, we gotta give him a little bit more love than that, man. I mean, look at this graphic look at Watson and Peters put on an absolute clinic on Saturday. I mean, it's just, Bryce had 7 receptions, 108 yards, 3 touchdowns. Watson had 5 for $107 and 3 touchdowns as well. Man, I mean, just some games are like that in Division II high-end football. You're just going to have some dudes that can go out and make plays, and that was just so fun to watch those two guys go at it.
Yeah. Bryce on the season so far, 12 catches, 180 yards, and 5 touchdowns for Bryce Peters. What a season he's having so far in the NSIC. So, yeah, congrats to Bryce.
And we talked about that too, Ian. Last year we said, this is a wide receiving core that's going to need to step up after losing Bolio. And now, of course, they graduated Del Duncan Busby. They needed somebody to step up and be that guy. And it's really fun to see Peters take that step to go from a guy who had a nice season, was there for him, a little buried on the depth chart the last couple of years. And now with his opportunity to get a ton of snaps, he's taken advantage and is playing really, really well. It's really fun to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to run around the NSIC quick, CJ?
Yeah, before we preview the game against Southwest, why don't we take a run across the NSIC? Ian, what do we have there?
So there's a couple games that took place on Thursday this last week. Wayne State really putting the pedal to the metal against MSU Moorhead, 44-17. I was surprised to see it that lopsided, especially in Moorhead. Augustana beating UMary 35-13, and Saginaw Valley State beating Winona State 38-14. So Winona drops a game out of conference early in the season. This was a shocker to me. Minot State in Marshall against SMSU, the team Bemidji State will be playing this week. Minot State won 42-9 over SMSU. SMSU has fallen from grace. They used to kind of be like they weren't great.
Good team.
But they were pretty much shoo-ins to beat Minot and Concordia and Upper Iowa every year. They were maybe bottom 6 in the conference, but they were firmly above the bottom 4. Now they've kind of fallen from grace even more. The Beavers, if that's any preview of the matchup that we're going to get with them this week here in Bemidji, it's not good looking for them. Of course, Minnesota State unfortunately beats the Beavers 31-29. Upper Iowa, former conference members, 33-7 over Concordia St. Paul, and Sioux Falls, 34-10 victory over Northern State. So not much to say in terms of standings right now, only one game apiece for anybody in the conference. Some teams haven't even played a conference game yet, so there's not much to look at in terms of conference placement so far. But that's kind of what's been going on in the NSIC.
Looking back to the game against Southwest Minnesota State, remember a year ago, Bemidji State beat them 34-14. If you look at the all-time record, Bemidji State has 27 wins compared to 21 losses and 1 tie. Bemidji State currently has won the last 5 matchups between the two schools, and the longest winning streak between them was a 13-game win streak that Bemidji State had from 98 to 2013. Bemidji State, of course, this game being played at the Chet, is 15-7-1 against the Mustangs, and they first played all the way back in 1970 as well. Looking at this matchup, Ian, like you talked about, Southwest is a team that's fallen from that middle tier of the NSIC, and they've fallen into the bottom. But last year, SMSU still made it a little tough on Bemidji State in that first half. It took the Beavers a little bit to pull away, if you remember, a season ago. So what do we expect for Bemidji State football in this? What's the game plan? Is it keep it on the ground, be simple, or is it, hey, we have some confidence, let's kind of see what we can do, let's test some things out in some game reps? What do you think ends up happening for Bemidji State?
I think it'll be, I think that they'll kind of air it out a little bit more than you would expect. So the run game really got going against Mankato, and if they want to just put the pedal to the metal and win this game, I think they should just pound the rock as much as they possibly can. They're probably still going to try some things through the air that they want to work on. But I would expect a running attack to be the number one thing that this team really leans into. So far, SMSU's only played one game. This is a matchup between two of the top 3 rushing attacks in the NSIC. SMSU so far averaging 241 rush yards per game. Bemidji State 238 rush yards per game. The defensive difference is that Bemidji State's defense only averages 69 yards a game on the ground. Nice. And Southwest Minnesota State's averages 202 yards allowed on the ground per game. Not nice. So the Beavers should be able to run all over this Southwest Minnesota State team. Shout out Minot State. They averaged 309 yards per game on the ground so far. Granted, I think they played a pretty bad team last week.
Did they play? That was their non-conference game, wasn't it?
I think it was. Yeah, it was. It was like against a D3 team or something like that. I swear.
Did they play Jamestown or something like that?
They might have. Was it Mary or was it them? I'll peep the schedule really quick.
I know Jamestown is going to enter the NSIC in the coming years, so that's a potential thing to watch. A little North Dakota rivalry there.
Oh, no, Mary played Jamestown. Minot State played Valley City State.
Oh, so, Valley City State. Forget
that might be a little bit of a reason why they averaged 309 yards per game on the ground.
Them and their cross country runner. I got a brother that runs for them, so forget them. Forget them. Those guys. Jeez, Valley City. Mary. By the way, did Mary beat Jamestown?
Yes.
Okay. What was that? What was that score you have in front of you?
That was 23-6.
Okay. All right. Well. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, hey, heck of a performance by Jamestown. They'll be entering the conference in a few years, so they're gonna have to get up. They're gonna have to step up to this level in a very good football conference. So, good to see them getting that start there. But I mean, overall for Bemidji State, yeah, it's gonna be running the football, and we've talked about coming into the season. Hey, can they run the football? And, we're not going to be able to pass back like you did with alt all the time. And it's going to be a different way you play football. And it feels like they've risen to the challenge, and they have been running the football effectively against some good defenses the first couple games. And it'll be fun to see now that they get an opportunity against a team where they can maybe run a little more wild here on Saturday.
Yeah. It's so interesting looking at the statistics here early in the season. I clicked over to the passing statistics now. Bemidji State currently 13th out of 13 in the conference in terms of passing defense. They average 269 yards against per game, so not very good so far for the Beavers in terms of pass defense.
Kind of wide receiver performance, though, by Watson will kind of skew it a little bit.
Yes. So I don't expect that to stay at 13 throughout the season. The best pass defense in the NSIC so far does happen to belong to Southwest Minnesota State. But again, that's skewed because Minot State apparently only passed the ball 6 times in that game against SMSU last weekend. So they went 3 for 6 with 32 yards. So SMSU currently,
if you're gashing them with the run game, why do anything else?
I don't even think it was that. I think it was just they were so worried about SMSU's corners that they just refused to pass it all game. Clearly.
Okay. All right. All right.
I'm getting way ahead of myself. Obviously, I don't think this is going to happen, but man, SMSU fans are going to find this and clip this after Bemidji State blows this game.
Hey, don't speak that into existence. Don't speak that into existence.
No, it won't happen.
We already spoke into existence.
Of all things that it might happen, I don't think this is going to be the one. I don't think this is going to be the one. I have pretty good confidence in Bemidji State to pull through in this one. They are dead middle of the conference in both scoring offense and scoring defense so far. 24 points per game offensively and 22 points per game defensively. That's going to be the one you see around week 5 or 6 where you really start to determine who's got the best scoring offenses. I don't think Minot State is going to stay up around 40 points per game all season. I'm just going to throw that out there. So again, give it a couple weeks. These stats will get a little bit more nuanced, and we'll be able to see just how these teams really look statistically on paper.
Hey, if you want to look at something positive for Bemidji State, look in their return, their punt return coverage. It currently is tops in the conference at 16.2 yards per return. They've had 5 punt returns and 81 return yards so far. In terms of kick returning, they're a little bit more towards that middle of the pack. They currently rank 9th in the NSIC, 15.2 yards per return. Wayne State College is sitting at number 1 with 41.7. Now they do have a kick return touchdown. The only team so far in the NSIC with a kick return touchdown. So that skews it a little bit. Then you have Winona State at 2nd with 32.6. Augustana at 3rd with 23.7, and so on and so forth. When you look at the kicking game for some of these schools, and you look at where Bemidji State is sitting there 3 for 4 on the season in field goal attempts. You also have Wayne State 3 for 3, Northern State 2 for 4, UMary 2 for 3. If we look at Southwest Minnesota State, they are 1 for 1 in their field goals so far. So great chance to speak a miss into existence if they get so far.
Yeah. I think that this is going to be a pretty good game for Bemidji State. Not that they're lacking any confidence, because I'm sure they take a lot out of that game against Mankato too. But just a game to really boost the confidence and head into that game against Sioux Falls in a couple of weeks pretty confidently. Let's just try to avoid making this a little bit of a trap game. Get out in front of them. Make sure. I would love to see if this is going to be a blowout like we maybe expect it will. Let's see what some of these young quarterbacks have. I'm very curious to see what some of these other guys have. I'm not saying that we need to bench McGath later in the season. He's clearly shut me up on that whole train that I was randomly on. But I'd love to see what some of these younger guys have in the tank. So let's get out to a solid lead by halftime, and then let's see what some of these guys can do.
Yeah, one thing that will help things for Bemidji State right now, they are second in the NSIC in terms of penalties, for second most penalties with 11. They have 106 yards off penalties. Only team worse in the conference is, weirdly enough, Wayne State. They've committed 14 penalties for 133 yards. For contrast, Minnesota State has only 4 penalties on the season for 28 yards. So a little laundry to clean up there. That's just, again, 2 games with any of these stats is still a little too small of a sample size, but just an important thing to kind of remember on some of these numbers throughout the next couple of weeks to see if they become patterns or if they kind of average themselves out over the course of a season.
I was going to bring that up. Like, okay, now I find it's 4 total penalties in this game, but outside of the, I wasn't on the field, that delay of game penalty that Bemidji State got to move Mankato 5 yards closer magically. I wonder exactly.
Yeah,
this game was a clean game. There was only 3 penalties in the game up until that point. No huge pass interference penalties. But honestly, most of the penalties I think were like inside the 5-yard line. Mankato committed 1 penalty for 3 yards. I think it was like an unsportsmanlike conduct when we were already inside the 10-yard line. So it really didn't matter at all. So it was, for all intents and purposes, a very clean game. I was noticing that. I was like trying to think back. Have I seen like any penalties? I mean, we might have like false started on the first drive of the game, if I remember correctly. But other than that, yeah, much better than the first game, because that was something that we kind of picked up on, is like, man, we can't keep doing this, like defensive penalties in the first game against Michigan Tech. That was a bigger storyline than I think we led on last week's episode, but much better in this game against Mankato.
I completely forgot about that defensive delay of game call, because what was it? I can't remember what the thing was, because
they were saying that, so it's illegal to try to imitate a snap count or something for a defensive player if they're barking out something. I don't know exactly what they were claiming Bemidji had done, but apparently the false start on the Mankato player was Bemidji State's fault. So that's why they call it delay of game.
Right. Like, we're not on the field. Again, we don't know what the heck happened, but
yeah, I don't know why they called it. But yeah, 5 free yards. Here you go, Mankato.
Here you go. Here turns a semi-hard field goal into a chip shot. I mean, 5 yards is 5 yards, but it's still just that deflating, like, okay. But yeah, that, because I remember we were all seeing it. And again, in the Discord chat, which you can join, we saw the flag. We saw a guy jump, and we're like,
yeah, pushing back 5 yards. Let's go. And then they're like,
the sheer.
No, I actually think this is going to be on Bemidji State. I'm like, shut the hell up, dude. No, it isn't.
All right. I think we've said all we need to say on football. So let's move on to some other sports here. Ian, why don't we talk about...
I forgot to mention, I will be at the SMSU game this weekend.
Oh, you just
completely blew my mind as we're talking about it this whole time.
You're gonna
made the plans last night. I will be there this weekend for senior day and the Shrine game.
What brings Mr. Rivers to Marshall?
The game's at the Chet.
Oh yeah, the chat. Excuse me. Yeah.
So we'll be going up to Bemidji.
Yeah, you are not. You'd be very mistaken if you go to Marshall. What brings Mr. Rivers up to Bemidji besides the game? What's all your weekend plan?
I don't know. Actually, it's going to be weird because normally I go up and me and a former roommate of mine. Can I help you? Sorry, anybody that's listening to the audio, my dog is trying to make herself comfortable on the bed behind me.
If you watch on YouTube, you could see the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. Normally I'm up there for like a hockey series, and so we've got stuff to do Friday and Saturday, and then I'll head back home on Sunday. But yeah, we'll have to find something to do on Friday. I'm not sure we have much planned yet. Maybe a bonfire or something like that.
You live in the glory days, toting around downtown Bemidji.
Yep, absolutely. I actually was thinking about heading down to Mankato. Mankato, I think, is the closest now that St. Cloud State doesn't have a program. We'll throw that in there just to throw shade at St. Cloud State again. Why not?
Losers don't.
Mankato is actually like the closest geographically to me outside of Concordia St. Paul would be closer, but those are the two closest, and we don't play CSP this year. So I thought about going down for that game just because I'm in the relative area, but I think I might be trying to go to a hockey game in Mankato this year against the Beavers, depending on when that series lines up. I haven't made the official plan yet, but yes, just
do it.
Completely forgot, but I will be in attendance for the game this weekend in Bemidji.
So which means if you're watching the broadcast or listening to the radio and they go, why is there that naked guy running at the 50-yard line? It's just Ian promoting the podcast. He's got to paint it on his chest.
Yes. We need Kevin Harlan to broadcast it just as he's done.
And be a man. Kevin Harlan, man. But yeah, awesome. We expect you to get some content for us at the field, a little pregame picks, a little postgame vid or something.
Oh yeah.
There we go. This is an on-air production meeting, by the way, as we talk
behind the scenes.
This is behind the curtain, in front of the curtain. But yeah, that's cool. So glad that you can get up there and check out that game. Okay, so now moving on to the next order of business on our list. The volleyball team went down to Hawaii, of all places, and got to enjoy a little non-conference tournament to get their season started, and they go 2-2 to begin the year. A nice little start for BSU volleyball.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just like last year, they played in a tournament and they won 2 out of their 4 games. And unfortunately, this year, they got reverse swept in the first game. They had it within their fingertips, and they were not able to pull that victory out. So 2-2, though, that's still on track to do what they did last season and really compete and try to. We'll see what happens when NSIC play starts. It's a tough conference, but I'm happy with the wins. You know, it's more than we could say about the couple years prior to last season. So I'm very happy with that. And yeah, speaking of that Hawaii at Hilo game, our Beaver Banter Athlete of the Week actually is inspired by this game. It was, who was it? Set a career best in kills in a single volleyball game. It was Riley. What did we?
Bjerkley.
Yes, Bjerkley. There we go. Why did that not do that earlier when I clicked on it? I was just hovering over it.
We talked about it before we started recording too. About
yes, we did, and I'm like, you know what? I want to get it correct because I want to give her true credit. And I accidentally clicked on the little ear as I was hovering over it, and now we have that on the podcast. So hopefully my mic just didn't pick it up, and now we just
it picked it up as I heard it.
We just look like we're rambling for no reason. But yes,
it's just a podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, technically. Yeah, so congrats to Riley. I believe she had 20 kills in that game against Hawaii at Hilo. So good for her. It was hard not to give it to Bryce again. He had a hell of a year, but
this close.
Damn it, Bryce, we told you we weren't trying to do too many repeat offenders, and especially not back-to-back. So still shout out to him for a great game. But yeah, I felt like it wasn't fair to just be like, yeah, this guy is going to get it every week if he keeps playing like this. So.
To be fair.
To be fair.
To be fair.
He had a hell of a game. But
he did have a...
So did Riley.
If that would have been the game-winning touchdown pass, I think it would have been hard to turn down. But
yeah, that would have been a lot harder if that was like with 4 seconds left and we ended up getting a Sports Center top 10 level catch to take the lead. I would have had a hard time just not doing it again, but yeah.
Right. Anyway, so volleyball's got a few more games left over the next few days, and it rounds out the non-conference schedule. Ian, do you have the schedule pulled in front of you for BSU volleyball? Who are they playing?
I do. They have a couple of games in Michigan, 2 games in Grand Rapids on Friday, one at 9 a.m. against Glenville State, and then one at 6 p.m. against Davenport. And then they go to Allendale, Michigan on Saturday. They play again at 9 a.m. against Saginaw Valley State. And then they take on number 19 in the country, Grand Valley State, at 3 p.m. on Saturday. So quite the docket of teams here coming up this weekend. Friday and Saturday will be jam-packed. And, we'll see what the stamina looks like. Maybe Grand Valley is going to be a little tired coming after 4 games. I don't know if they technically play 4 games like we do this weekend, but might be a little early season upset watch for Grand Valley State. The Beavers are going to come and they're going to be on upset alert. I'm going to go ahead and pre-fire that one right now.
You're sounding the alarms, let's say. You're putting the signal up out there.
I'm putting it out there.
I mean, hey, NSIC is a great volleyball conference. So Bemidji State going in there and playing well. I know they're ranked, but hey, I could see it. I could see it.
Sir. Yes, sir. It'll happen.
It's within the realm of possibility. And then a week from tomorrow, Bemidji State will begin their NSIC play with a matchup against Crookston, and then a game at Minnesota State. That's technically not a conference game, but they will play.
What is that about, dude? Because I was looking at that before. Is that really not a conference game?
I think it's because they play them another time in the schedule, and I think
No, because we played
a couple teams.
Minot and UMary last year twice. I'm seeing Crookston on here twice. I'm seeing.
I don't know. I don't know if there's only like a certain number of
on here twice.
Play.
It might just be an error in whoever's running the website, to be honest. But I guess we'll figure it out when that week comes, or if there's any updates. But as of right now, it says that it's not a conference game.
To be fair, it's easy to miss it. As somebody who has put together schedules on the back end of the website before, it's literally I know it's run a different way. I think they have a different back end of the website, like the like coding and stuff like that. So it's a little different than when I did it. But it's literally just putting like an asterisk in a certain box, and that's what indicates it's a conference game. Completely interesting process. Anyway, I spent a lot of my time just uploading old football and volleyball schedules into the website. So I'm looking through programs from like 1973 and I'm loading into the website. Anyway, that was what I did for my on-campus job while at Bemidji State, while getting to go to all the football and basketball games. So that was fun. But let's shift gears here. Let's cover little cross country. Bemidji State had 4 finishers in the top 50 for women's cross country at the Tony St. Pierre Invite in St. Cloud. And that's pretty darn cool. You got 4 finishers in the top 50 there. Carol Miller finished in 24th place with a time of 20 minutes, 3.8 seconds. Behind Miller by under 24 seconds was Abigail Namakawaya. Sorry for butchering that name. Took 37th in her first collegiate race with a final time of 20 minutes, 27.3 seconds. Carmen Lyon and Sophie Rylance ended the race 43rd and 44th, respectively, with times of 20 minutes, 41.3 seconds, and 20 minutes, 44.6 seconds, respectively, rounding out the top 50 finishes, adding 41 points to the Beavers team total. Sydney Price finished at 63rd, and the final runner for the Beavers, Ava Werner, finished 85th with a final time. On the team front, obviously Bemidji State did not come out in first place. It was UW Stout that took home that one. I'm sorry, it was College of St. Benedict that was hosting this one in St. Cloud. But either way, Beavers now go to Moorhead. They race on Friday at the Dragon Twilight, hosted by MSU Moorhead. It's a 5,000 meter race that begins at 7:30 p.m. And there you go. There's your cross country update. Ian, let's talk a little bit about men's and women's golf, because they are hosting meets this week.
Yeah, they are. Usually the golf season is split into two different seasons. Spring is when it starts to get a little serious, but yeah, they're hosting the 73rd Bemidji State Invitational this weekend.
The men's golf are.
The men's golf are actually no, it's currently going on.
Yeah, it's a 2-day event. They had races Monday and Tuesdays. We're recording this Tuesday afternoon.
Yes.
We don't quite have the live results for everything.
Yeah, so they got first out of 9 yesterday, at that being Monday, and Tuesday. Again, we do not have the live results for that, but yeah, so that's happening on the men's side. And CJ, is that the same on the women's side?
Yeah, so Bemidji State is hosting the Tracy Lane Memorial Tournament. That was Tuesday and Monday. And again, we don't have official results yet for everything. Looking at the results here, I don't see anything quite yet. So we're gonna have to wait till everything's wrapped up. We'll cover it all next week. But again, cool to get to see Bemidji hosting a couple meets throughout this week, which is really fun to see as well. Wrapping things up, Ian, on the Beaver Banter podcast this week, we left a little bit of time for it. Women's soccer had a couple non-conference games at the Chet. And again, we talked about Bemidji State as a team that likes to play low-scoring soccer. They grind you to dust. They're a defensive-minded team. And sometimes you can just come out on the bad end of a 1-0 loss. And Bemidji State did that twice to start the women's soccer season. Ian, talk me off the cliff. Should we be hitting the panic button?
Yeah, I really don't know, because these are not games that we're used to seeing from Bemidji State. They got outshot in the first game 16-7. Including 4-1 shots on target by Missouri Western. And then they play Drury and they get outshot 23-2, including an 8-1 shots on target differentiation. So definitely not what we're used to seeing out of Bemidji State. But I know that Drury played against Northern State the day before or on Friday, and they absolutely dominated them. So these are decent teams that Bemidji State is going up against. Like we said last week, it's really hard to know these things until you actually see these plays or see these games play out, because these are non-games against Division II soccer teams that we just don't know a lot about. And in terms of Drury, we've never played them, and this is only our fifth ever game, or maybe sixth now, against Missouri Western. So really hard to tell, but in terms of a shot disparity, that is alarming to say the least. 23-2. Yeah, and a couple of 1-0 losses. So defensively, I mean, giving up one goal isn't horrible, but when you don't score at all, that's means you drop 2 games. Score. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and yeah, they're just 2-1-0 losses. Bemidji State has had these before. I mean, even the last couple of years when things have been weird throughout the middle of the regular season, it's typically because of games like this, because that's the style Coach Stone and the Beavers want to play. Is they like to play a defensive first. We're going to do everything tight on our end defensively. We're going to wait for you to make a mistake, and we're going to not let you get into the goal. And if we can keep them out of net, then all we have to do is score a goal and win the game. It's why Bemidji State wins a lot of games 1-0. It also means that you're capable of losing a lot of games 1-0 when your offense can't get anything going, or can't take advantage of a mistake. And again, it's early because Bemidji State has had these before, and then they've turned around and made the NCAA tournament and won the NSIC tournament and have done things like that. So this is not a panic by any stretch, but yeah, it's just one of those where it's just not necessarily the start to the year that you would have wanted, especially coming off of another strong season.
Yeah. You don't have to be playing your best games in September. You want to be doing that in November, but definitely not exciting to see 2 home losses to start the season. But a couple games this weekend in Iowa, both of them in Fayette. Quincy University is the first game on Friday at 5 p.m. And then they play Upper Iowa, a former conference member, at noon on Sunday. So let's see. 2 screens. I can watch BSU soccer destroy Upper Iowa, and I can watch the Chargers destroy the Panthers. That will be interesting. I think I'll do that. That sounds like a good Sunday to me.
Oh my goodness. I'm just imagining the flip side of things and Ian just about like punching a hole through his wall.
Yeah. Well, I don't expect Bemidji State to let me down in that game. So that would mean that the other team would
And by the way, should I mention, Ian, another Beaver Banter episode where the Chargers are mentioned?
That's 3 out of 4 this year, man. We didn't talk about them last year, our last episode. I thought about it, but I didn't.
Yeah, so. I thought we squeezed them in at the end.
I don't think we did. I think I thought about it because there was a point where we were at where I was like, oh, could do it. It's pretty natural right here, but I didn't. I held myself back, but yeah, had to. I mean, hey, anybody who follows my actual personal account, it was Raiders week, so I have been a little bit more aggressive on social media. I try to make sure that I'm logged on to the Beaver Banter page whenever I'm tweeting that type of thing. But
why does the Beaver Banter account tweet F the Raiders?
Yeah. What? Yeah. I try to keep that limited to my personal account, but I'm sure some of the people that follow us probably still see that. So just know that that's why it's been so many this week, because it was Raider week and we won. So I've been particularly boisterous on social media over the last few days.
Now that things are flipped over to the Panthers, now it's just like, I mean, you win, but it's like
you just feel bad for them, to be honest. Like
you just feel bad. I mean, another team that you could feel bad for, maybe we shouldn't feel bad for the Carolina Panthers. Adam Thielen, I know he was a Minnesota Viking, but he was Mankato Maverick, and you know what? It's just darn shame. Just a darn shame.
Yeah.
He took the money. He took the money to go play in Carolina.
He's from Detroit Lakes.
Well, did you know he took a $500 scholarship to play?
What?
He was going to.
This is
I love
news
Adam
to me.
Thielen, by the way, but now that he's off the Minnesota Vikings, I'm now thinking of more of as a Mankato Maverick. In which case, I'm trying to get him out of my subconscious. But if we're talking about rough starts for another former NSIC player, Gunnar Olszewski did not play in the game on Sunday against the Minnesota Vikings. He's the New York Giants punt returner. He was a late scratch, I believe. So that was tough. And look, the New York Giants are going to be not necessarily going to be doing a lot of punt returns because it means their defense is getting stops.
I think they play a game in Germany later this year against Carolina. It's going to be for the number 1 pick. Let's just put it that way.
Battle for the number 1 pick on next to it. They got just going to be bad football. Not good. Not good. This is the final blow for World War II. Is here you go, Germany. Your last punishment. You just see the Carolina Panthers play the.
Yeah. We're gonna have all these games that help grow. I don't think they're doing that. I don't think they're trying to help grow the game. I think they're trying to make Europeans not ever want to play football again because they're subjecting them to 3 hours of Bryce Young and Daniel Jones.
Yeah, not great. They will be treated, though, to Gunnar Olszewski returning a punt return touchdown. How about that?
There will be plenty of punting in that game. So if Gunnar's healthy, he will have an opportunity to take one to the house.
He'll have an opportunity to do the best thing ever.
Absolutely.
So there we go.
And then point directly in Adam Thielen's face as he does it.
Say, take that. And then
this one's for what was the date that we lost? Well, this one's for September 6th or whatever Saturday was. I can't remember what the date was.
Yeah, and this is for this season of this for September 7th. Take that.
Yeah.
And all is right with the world. Okay. Well,
we've seen the vision. We have the script.
We have seen the vision. We have the script. We are all set to go. Gunnar, your last hope to avenge us, man. Come on. You got to do this. Do it for Bemidji.
Absolutely.
Do it for us. Do it for us. All right. That's going to wrap things up for us on the Beaver Banter podcast. We plugged the Discord a couple times. Once again, go join that. Other than that, we'll see you guys back here next week. This has been another installment of the Beaver Banter podcast.